Okay, welcome back to the channel. So this is an odd video because um, benchmark videos that and I watched a ton of them, by the way, for like the M1 Max and all that. They're so subjective and they're so individualized that whatever applies to me is likely not to really apply to someone else. But I'm going to walk you through the process of how it worked, how I'm using, or the criteria that I'm using so that I can choose the proper computer, because I'm in the market for another computer. And so just one little side note before I talk about the numbers here. I bought a M1 MacBook Pro. It wasn't base model, but it was just slightly configured above it. 32 gigs of RAM. I think it was a 512 gig hard drive. This is when the first 16-inch MacBook Pro Max came out. And I got it home and I ran Logic specifically only on it by itself. And I had some real lackluster results on it. I mean, to the point where I took it back. I think even like it was a couple days within the buying return policy. And but I needed a modern computer to run Final Cut and all that, because the alternative was to use this old Mac Pro, which I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's pretty powerful, but it can never be updated. It can't run modern software. It's a 2012 computer. Actually, it's a 2009 computer that had been upgraded to 2012 Mac Pro and all that. So it's in the end of, as far as modern, in the modern world, it's at the end of life already. So let's move fast forward. So I'm stuck with this M1 Mac Mini that I bought so I could run Final Cut. And like everyone else is complaining, the hard drive was too small and potentially the RAM. So I used it mainly for more modern apps, and it worked really well with my iPhone and iPad. But as far as music, I really never honestly considered using it for music until I ran into a brick wall and trying to find the right Mac computer to step into. And believe it or not, I mean, Apple's got a chokehold on their tiered pricing, if you haven't already noticed. So I'm using this hardware as a benchmark to figure out what might be the proper fit, excuse me, to move into, because I don't want to spend a ton of money on extra computer that I don't need. And I've got a really good workflow already set up. So here's the deal. I've got an Army Babyface Pro. It's just a USB 2.0 interface, nothing special, other than the fact that it's got pretty good drivers. And Army's known for that as well. M1 base Mac Mini. And the third little thing is the MPC software, which is running 2.11.7, which has some enhanced improvements that are M1 compatible. And I'm running the software at a audio buffer size. This is how I would actually use it. At 64, which is about a little bit over a millisecond of latency, and at a sample rate of 48. Okay, so what I have here, now typically I don't run a lot of plugins. Matter of fact, I've basically been running my own expansion packs. I've got like 41 of them now. And that alleviates not just a certain amount of simplicity of where to find your sounds, but also alleviates having to deal with like Superior 3, Omnisphere, Keyscapes, as you go down the line, the UVI stuff. And so the complexity of what is taxing your system, or what combinations of software, it's kind of like been eliminated. It's really a big deal for me. So what I did here is I've got probably 3 times the amount that I would run at one single time. But so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different okay, I've got 6 different drum libraries in here, which is really way more than I would run at one time. And then as far as key group instruments from the sample libraries that I have, go to unused track here. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 27. So about 27 key group instruments, which is at least double, if not maybe even triple. Matter of fact, I'll even load a couple more key group instruments in here. I mean, this is a lot. It really actually is way more than I would do. Then we'll load this C7. Okay, so I've got 30 some odd key group instruments with all the drum programs. Now, one thing, like I said, this is not like super scientific, but one thing I'm looking at while I'm running this is a little bit about the CPU usage, which seems to be managed relatively well with the latest updates and the drivers. The other thing I'm looking at is what they call the memory swap and the amount of memory that's using. So I know the OS does a certain amount of memory management, and it's going to swap in order to keep its buffer properly so the computer can run at its best no matter what's running. So it's swapping almost about a gig short of a gigabyte. So it's like 649 megabytes is swapping. Okay, so what I'm looking at is the so I'm looking at the CPU, and the CPU, like I said, this is not super scientific, but it's just sort of like a clothes fitting. Like I said, you're just trying to get a feel for what might fit you and what might not fit you, okay? And so the base model M1 Mac Mini looks like, and I'm glad I'm starting with the lowest amount, looks like the CPU can actually handle everything that I'm going to do, with, albeit I'm going to be using Studio One 6 simultaneously with the MPC. You know, the MPC is going to be sort of the front end for the MIDI and the audio sound creation. Studio One's going to be the back end for the audio, and they're going to run simultaneously. This goes back to like the Pro Tools mix days when you used to use Opcode, Studio Vision, or Cubase in the front end. That's when Pro Tools didn't have MIDI, right? It's another workflow video. You can go back. I think it's like 2 weeks ago I posted that video. So I'm going to leave a little bit of room for that. So it's going to run 2 DAWs at one time. So I'm going to sort of carve out some space that I might need to have, not just hard drive space, but RAM and CPU usage, right? And so the M1 Mac Mini is very capable. Where I see short is the amount of RAM. 8 gigs is just not enough. And this is congruent to what a lot of other people have said, running either similar or setups just in general as it relates to music and audio. So I think the conclusion is the baseline Mac Studio with the 10 cores, 32, probably 64 gigs of RAM. It's not much of an upgrade for that. And then at least a terabyte of storage. Now, if I remember configuring that, it's still like $3,000. I mean, after taxes, you start working your way up a little bit. But that machine should bring me into the modern world with enough juice to do the stuff that I need to do, plus probably hopefully a little bit of then some. And when I get it, I'll post a video, because I am interested in the amount of RAM swap, memory swap, as it relates to how big your sessions are going. And I'll put it to the test when I get it. And then whether I stick with the RME interface. I think I need a little bit more than that as far as inputs and outputs, especially the outputs. But so I'm looking at the PreSonus Quantum 2626, which is a Thunderbolt interface, and I'm looking at the Quad or the X4 Apollo as well. But I think that's pretty much where I'm going. So, and I know this video does not really apply to all of you out there because we all have different workflows and different combinations of hardware. But that's sort of the benchmarking that I'm using right now to determine what computer I might need to move to after this M1 Mac Mini. So, anyway, until next time, leave me questions, comments, and peace out.